So how would Georgia O'Keeffe paint or draw wildflowers? Well, first thing she would do is she would isolate and enlarge them, right? Because we know Georgia O'Keeffe would take something small and then she would enlarge it as if it were under a microscope, okay? So your assignment is going to be to get out in this beautiful Texas landscapes, Texas wildflowers, look for some wildflowers, and then I want you to create something in the style of Georgia O'Keeffe, okay? You can use marker, which I've done here. I just took a big marker and I didn't worry about whether or not I was going to mess up. I looked at my line quality. I went over some lines. I didn't erase because I can't erase when I'm using a marker. Just be flowy, and don't worry about mistakes, okay? So you can use marker, or if you don't have a marker, then you can use regular pencil. I don't know if you can see this or not. You can just use regular pencil. I have some blue bonnets. I actually found some at HEB, and of course, they're all along the highway. Don't pick them. You're not supposed to pick them. That's against the law. But what I did is I used this as my reference, and I just drew some of the simple shapes. Remember, Georgia O'Keeffe simplified everything. And if you don't have watercolors, you can use just good old-fashioned markers, the water-soluble kind. And it's a little bit trickier, but you can use a paintbrush and some water. You want to make sure you have some paper towel or some Kleenex or these are just old napkins that I have. I don't want you to go out and spend a lot of money. I just want you to have some inspiration, have a place to start, okay? So you can take your markers and you can color your, that's Bridget. Bridget, be quiet. I don't know if Georgia O'Keeffe had a dog or not. But I can choose some areas to color with my marker. And then I can take just plain water. Oh, we want more than one value of this blue, because blue bonnets are kind of a purpley blue. I'm going to use some purple in here. Okay, now I'm going to take my water and a paintbrush, and you want to use the biggest paintbrush you have. If you'll notice, look what happens when you put the water with that washable marker. You can actually even let it run together and use some of that color. Look how beautiful that is. I'm doing this quickly. But isn't that awesome? And then you can let it dry, and once you let it dry, then you can go back and add a little bit more detail if you want some more details. Oh, here's a big one. So it acts like watercolor, okay? Then you could do the same thing with the green, with the leaves, if you wanted to add green. Now, if you want to use watercolor, if you have some watercolors, they don't have to be expensive, but you don't want to bring them straight out of the watercolor palette. You want to either dull them, or you want to lighten them or darken them. And in all of our previous studies, we've talked about how you dull a color, you add a little bit of its complement. Because you don't want it to look like Crayolas when you come out of the painting. I did this one earlier because you have to do watercolor in stages, but if you'll notice, I have different values of green, I have different values of blue, and how did I do that? Well, whoops. Oh well, this is our first video, right? Okay, so I added a little bit of red to my green to make it a little bit duller, and then I added a tiny bit of orange to my blue to give it a little bit of dullness. this book. I have to tell you about this book because it's O'Keeffe in Texas, and one of my former students gave this to me. Rachel, I still have this book. If you watch this YouTube video, remember you giving me this as a gift one year. Okay, so if you have watercolors, just make sure that you're dulling them a little bit so that they're not coming straight out of the palette. And I use anything for a palette. I use lids. I use jars for my water. Keep your water clean. Keep your lid clean. When you get through mixing these colors, you want to take this out. And people don't realize that you can take these out. And once you take these out, it's a little difficult right now because they're sticking and I don't want to get all over my table. But you can take this out and then you wash this and then you have a clean palette. So make sure you take care of your stuff. Even though this is a not expensive paint palette, it can produce some beautiful effects, okay? And put something down on your table. You know how I'm always telling you guys to put something down on the table before you paint or before you draw. It's easier to clean this up than it is to try to get it off the table. The other option that you can do is you can do a landscape in the style of Georgia O'Keeffe. You can go outside, take a photograph. You can get on your computer and look at pictures on your computer to see if you can find a picture. Don't copy it exactly. Don't worry about it looking perfect. What I'm after is I want you to enjoy the ride. I want you to enjoy the process. Relax and give yourself some time. Let it dry in between times. If you want to do a landscape, like I said, either take a picture from outside or get a picture off the internet and use it as a reference. Don't keep looking at it though. Just look at it for your color combination and kind of decide on what you're going to create. Now I've chosen one off the internet because it's getting dark and it's kind of rainy outside, so I don't want to be outside doing this. So I don't know if it was sunset or sunrise. It's kind of hard to tell, but I'm going to start with my lightest value first, which is my yellow, and I'm going to create, always do your excess, I'm going to create a sun. This dog is she's decided she wants to be on the video, I guess. I don't know, this is really funny. Okay, so I'm going to start with my lightest value first. I'm going to put in a little yellow, and then I'm going to add, she's impossible. Bridget, you're never like this. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of red in my sun. You want to leave some white areas in there and let them bleed with each other. Okay. Then I'm going to add a little bit of blue. Let them bleed. Use the biggest paintbrush you can. Don't try to worry about getting in there and getting details. Again, I want you just to enjoy the ride. I want you just to feel the way it flows and the way things that happen to it. Things that just happen. I'm going to use a little bit of purple too this time. Don't get them straight out of the paint palette. And notice I'm leaving some areas with a little bit of white in there because the light is going to be very important. It's going to actually reflect and it's going to give it a little bit more life. Hello, Bridget. You think I have food? Is that what you think? Now, I'm not even looking back now at my picture that I saw. I'm just adding some more color. Now, as I do the bottom part, this is where I'm going to have some of the wildflowers. And so I'm going to use a different stroke. When I use the stroke at the top, I'm going to sideways. I went horizontally, and I used it very wet and saturated. Now I'm going to, I want some green, but I don't want it to be straight out of this palette. So I'm going to add some yellow to it. And I know I'm mixing my colors, but when I do that, when I get ready to clean them up, I'll make sure all the green gets out of there. But watch, I'm going to go this direction. Now I'm going to go vertical instead of horizontal. Okay? To kind of give it the feeling that there is some grass, maybe in a field somewhere. Okay, now I already have one that I've done earlier that I wanted to show you because I wanted to add some of the flowers to it. So give me just a second. Move, Bridget. I don't know. But anyway, this is one that I did earlier, and I noticed I did the green vertical and I did the background horizontal. So now I'll let this dry. And it was the same technique that I was doing here. I let this dry, and now I'm going to go back in and give it a little hint of some wildflowers being in there. But I couldn't do it while it was wet, because if it's wet, then it's just going to bleed and get muddy. So you have to be patient when you're doing this one. This is a little bit more complicated than the other ones that I was doing. They're a lot more simpler. So you have to decide on which one you want to do. Do you want to make it, you want to try this and be a little bit more patient, or do you want to do one of the other ones that seem a little bit more simple. You can also take a photograph if you want to. Make sure you're cropping it if you're going to do that. You can also do it digitally if you want to do that. So that's up to you. Okay, so now I want to add some wildflowers to my painting, and this is completely dry. So now I'm going to go in. I'm still using a big paintbrush. I'm not doing a lot of detail. And that dog is hilarious. I wish you could see this dog. Okay, so I'm thinking about Indian paintbrushes. I'm thinking about blue bonnets. I'm thinking about sunflowers. And so I'm going to add just some little hints of Indian paintbrushes maybe. And, again, not real detailed, just kind of the idea that there's some leaves there or some little flowers there. And I'm going to work like one side and then work the other side. You don't want to do it directly on top of this because it'll get muddy. Okay, so now maybe I'm going to hint at some blue bonnets over here maybe. And again, I'm not even looking at a resource or at a reference picture, but if you want to make sure that you're doing it the right way, or that that you need something to look at, then by all means, look at a resource. Don't copy it exactly. You want it to be free and easy and out of your imagination. Okay, so now I'm just hinting that there are some blue bonnets over in here in this field. And I want to add some orange to this side over here because I don't want it to be quite so vibrant red. Because Indian paintbrushes aren't all red. They're kind of orangey. And a lot of times when you see wildflowers, Texas wildflowers, they're in clumps. You might see a bunch of Indian paintbrushes, but then you'd also see the blue bonnets in another cluster on the others, around the corner. But notice, see how it's not all one solid red color. I've got some oranges in there. I'm letting those bleed together so that it looks as though there's a little light in there. You want there to be a variation of the color. Okay, so you get the idea. I'm doing blue bonnets, I'm doing Indian paintbrushes, I'm doing my landscape. This one's a little bit more complicated. If you want to do a little bit more complicated, that's fine. But just be patient, let it dry in between times. Okay? Thanks, guys. Until next time.